I did was educate myself, and I started surrounding myself with awesome people whose track record I could leverage. Because at the end of the day, if we're very young, we can't change that. Or even if we're just new, you can't really change that. But if you can just surround yourself with people who are doing whatever it is you want to do, and you're able to bring enough value to partner with them, then anyone you're speaking with will take you more seriously.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Harder Working Money Podcast. We got a cool guest today. It's Jeffrey Donis with Donis Investment Group. These are some young brothers that are going at it in the real estate world.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to it.
No problem. So I've only, come in contact with you and learned about you guys recently, and I was surprised and a little humbled, I would say, because I'm in my 40s and thought I'm doing pretty well, and I see these guys that are in their 20s that are farther along than I am. And the biggest question is so you're just a little backstory between you and yourself and your brothers. Like, how do you end up in your 20s in the real estate world and not just like single family? Like, how do you even get started? How do you get enough money to like go at that?
Yeah. So, again, thank you for having me. Initially, we got into real estate about 3 years ago. It's been a little over 3 years at this point, and I was a college freshman at the time when I first learned about it. Obviously, growing up, I knew there was something called real estate. I thought it was just agents and people that sold houses. I had no idea you can invest in it. So my older brother was the one that learned about wholesaling first. And I won't go too into the details, but if you'd like me to, I can. So after, feel free to cut me off or whatever. But initially, it was wholesaling. We learned about that through YouTube, and then we started taking action on the education that we were getting. Slowly, we started cold calling, pulling lists of data. Eventually, we closed on our first deal, and that slowly led us to just reading more books, trying to continue our education, learning how to improve our business, and eventually we stumbled upon apartment syndication. And once we knew what that was, and it really piqued our interest, we realized that we didn't need to buy these apartment deals by ourselves. Obviously, we couldn't. We would need to use other people's money to do that, and it was cool that a thing called apartment syndication already existed. There were a lot of people already doing it. So that was really what pulled us in, was we knowing that we not only were people that didn't have enough money to buy it by ourselves, but didn't have the experience to do it by ourselves either. We could partner with other people, and that's the cool thing about apartment syndication. So we joined a mastermind group called Think Multifamily, actually, about 3 years ago now, and that was really what opened the floodgates to the deals, the network, the education, etc. And at this point, we've been able to do a few deals in the multifamily space, as well as we're still doing a little bit in the single family space, but that's like a high level about our journey, and I'm happy to break it up if you'd like.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, so that's a cool path to take, and one that just takes some grit and just going after it. Like, I know, so I started my first company when I was 25, and I looked young even for 25, and something I ran into a lot was either feeling like I'm too young for this, or I look too young. I remember growing a beard just so I looked older, and it didn't. Everyone still knew. How did you get over the I'm too young, or this is something only old people do? Because even myself, up to like 10 years ago, was like, real estate is like something you do when once you are successful, then you do real estate. Right. Did you ever run into those mental feelings or blocks, or just have anyone even ask you like, how old are you?
Yeah, all the time. So what I focus on is the investor relations and capital raising aspect of our business. And obviously, I went in person, like over the phone, which is a lot of the things that I do are over the phone. A lot of people can tell I sound young, and they'll literally all the time say, "You sound like a pretty young guy," and I get that all the time. But it's really just based on my voice, and how I've overcome that has been first and foremost educating myself. So obviously, I think everyone in this space, if you're on this podcast, that's what you're doing right now. And that may not be something you need to work on, but I like to think of it as something that you should be doing throughout your whole life, and not just after, stop after college or things like that. So to go back a little bit, I left school after my freshman year, and that was the main reason was because I wanted to pursue real estate full time and be an entrepreneur. I saw myself as not being someone that was right for school, and I think school is good for a lot of people. It just wasn't the right decision for me and my brothers. So once we left, we knew that was going to be, a risk and things like that. But we took our entrepreneurship journey very seriously, and the way that we approached it was by listening to podcasts, YouTube videos, and then as soon as we closed on our first deal, while taking action, I think I'll go into like how action can be really the best way to learn how to do things. But once we made a little bit of money, we didn't just invest that into, we didn't just spend that money loosely. We spent it and invested it into mastermind groups and different courses. The first one was a single family course on how to buy properties through owner financing. Later, we invested in a mastermind group for multifamily that taught us how to syndicate deals, as well as gave us access to a network of other lead sponsors, capital raisers, people that could help with different things like signing on loans and earnest money, all of the above. So as we were just slowly and steadily doing all of those things, when I talk to people, yes, I look young and I sound young, but I can at least carry the conversation at first, ask really good questions, and eventually, once take a lot of massive action, to go back to my point, while you're taking all these, making these mistakes, failing forward, eventually, if you just don't stop and you really are very intentional with how you're spending your time, we found a way to get into our first deal that came out of one of these mastermind groups. And once you do your first deal, I think in anything, but for us, it was for multifamily. We syndicated an apartment complex. It was over 100 units. That was a little over a little over 2 years ago. Once we did that, it gave me a real confidence boost, and I learned so much from actually doing the first deal. So once I had done that and closed on it, now when I go back to all the same people I'd already been talking to, or I started talking to new investors or new partners, I not only had this new sense of understanding as to what I was actually talking about because I was actually doing it now. The imposter syndrome, I don't think it ever goes away, but slowly you start to feel less and less like an imposter. I think it's good to feel like an imposter because that means you're pushing yourself and you're getting into things that are uncomfortable. But overall, those are I know that I kind of jumped around, but I'd say the main thing that I did was educate myself, and I started surrounding myself with awesome people whose track record I could leverage. Because at the end of the day, if we're very young, we can't change that. Or even if we're just new, you can't really change that. But if you can just surround yourself with people who are doing whatever it is you want to do, and you're able to bring enough value to partner with them, then anyone you're speaking with will take you more seriously if they see you partnered up with other people.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so true. And I feel like it's almost the best time when you're in your 20s to take a lot of action. And I don't want to say take risk, but it's taking action where you have to pivot or move because you don't have a house probably and family and all this sort of weight on you where taking action where it may not work or maybe have to quickly adjust or commit time or do something. It's so much harder as you add layers to your life. I think people miss that in your 20s is actually the best time to be going out and doing that sort of thing. And I had the same experience with my company when I first started. Super imposter syndrome. So I was going after little deals and trying not to poke my head out too much. And it ended up just like, heck with this. After I think a few years, I started going after the big projects and the big jobs, the ones I wasn't supposed to be, ready for.
Yeah.
And I finally landed one. And after that, it was like, okay, I have this big little tick I can now, show that I know how to do this. I have confidence in doing it. So it put some weight behind my own confidence, I guess you would say, to not take if someone asked me like, hey, how old, they'd always assume I was like the technician or like the lower level employee. And my boss was my sales guy. I had a sales guy that they had always talked to him. We'd go to meetings with clients and they would always talk to him and they would never even look at me. And then halfway through the meetings, they'd usually realize like, oh, the older guy keeps referring to this guy. He actually is the owner. I wouldn't introduce myself as like the owner. I was just, this is Brian. This is my, this is, and it was really funny to see that dynamic change, but just to stick with it and be confident. And then immediately you actually got more respect. It was like, oh, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. He has older people working for him. They're landing big deals, and it was kind of neat. So I totally can relate to that. So you guys are raising money. You have over 1,000 units now. Who is your target investor when raising money? Like, is it different for you guys? Is it the same as like what's your target?
Yeah, so I think this is I can take this as a branding question, which I hope you don't mind if I do.
Yeah.
Through our content, we naturally attract a younger audience, and obviously a lot of these younger people who are interested in investing may not have the financial means at this point to invest in our deals, because our deals typically, an average person in America probably can't afford to invest on most of them. So a lot of young people that are still in school or just freshly out of college, which is around where our age, our demographic naturally attracts with our content. A lot of those people don't have the financial means to invest. So we still like to make the content towards them, and naturally we've attracted investors that are working professionals, maybe have been in their W-2s for 10 to 15 years and are still looking to invest, but they're really new at investing, or just people that have never invested in multifamily in particular, but have built their own portfolio through single family, fix and flips, things like that. In regards to our niche, I would say, as I mentioned, it's a younger audience, but it's interesting that once you focus on a certain type of avatar, you just naturally attract other people that can relate in a certain type of way that you never imagined if you didn't actually niche down. So I think it's because we'll try to attract that younger person that may be really new to investing, and by keeping it very simple and relatable, you actually are able to attract a larger audience and people that you may have never thought you could attract.
Yeah, because like if I was an investor and I was kind of hesitant and I see this, 65-year-old guy that's got 20,000 units and all this stuff, it's like I don't want to talk to him. Like, he seems scary. Like, he seems unapproachable.
Right.
And I can't relate to him. I can relate to someone that is running their business in their 20s and sort of is intelligent and on their ball with what's going on, and is working with people that have also been doing it for a while. So to pivot sort of into working with family, I found that interesting about you guys. I currently don't work with family, but I have a brother who's in the real estate world that maybe
Mm-hmm.
someday we will end up working together. That's a whole nother dynamic. I think about my brother, like, we get along great now. We used to fight when we were younger. You can't just like separate your partnership with a brother as easily.
Yeah.
So like, how did you guys decide to go into working together? And like,
Mhm.
do you divide and conquer? Do you have similar personalities, different personalities? Like, how does that dynamic work? That's so much different than a partner you just find and can.
So initially, the reason we got into real estate was because we all obviously come from the same background. We grew up with a single mother, a low income, and we all had the same goal, and it's still our main personal goals at this point is to retire her. So that was the fire that we all had, that we all shared. So that's why we got into business together, because we all wanted to do that, and we thought real estate was a great way to achieve that, and obviously financial freedom for ourselves. And that goal has grown, and we have different goals now too. But in regards to my brothers and I, we each have our own strengths and personalities for sure. So I'm not a big numbers guy. Like, I love looking at numbers, but I don't really like staring behind a spreadsheet, and that's what my older brother initially, just he was the one that volunteered to do it. So he got good at it over time, and now he loves it. For me, I just talk to people all day, so I'm investor relations and raising money. In the meantime, in between deals, I think you're always raising money. So just reaching out to new contacts, building new relationships, getting on podcasts like this. And then my twin brother, he's very creative. He's like he wants to be an author, so he's writing books on the side. But that skill is very transferable, I think, to any business, and in particular marketing. So he's writing our blogs, doing our YouTube videos, editing those, and screenwriting them. So he'll tell us what to say on the videos, and we'll just stand in front of the camera and say it. And then the social media content as well on other platforms he's in charge of. So he does a great job with that, as well as our podcast. But I really enjoy working with them. I think the main benefit to it is, I'm fortunate that we all are very like-minded. I think in the right ways. First and foremost, work ethic. We all approach our business with, one of the top priorities in our life. We're all faithful, so that's something that I would love to. I think I'm very, very fortunate to have brothers that are both like in that same category, work ethic and faithful. And then on top of it, when I fight with my brothers, even if it's in the business or outside the business, because we do live together, so when we fight, we don't really hold grudges, and I can say what I want regardless of what it is, and they won't take it personally because they know I love them regardless. I don't know if that'd be the same case if it was with another business partner. So I think sometimes people just don't say what they're really thinking to their business partners because they're afraid that it'll lead to a fight, or maybe they'll take it personally, things like that. That I don't have to worry about. So I think it's really good to not have to worry about that in a business atmosphere. I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
if you agree.
true. Because that actually is true. Because you know, Okay, I had to jump in here real quick. I hope you're loving this interview as much as I am. To get all our content and stay up to date, make sure you follow us on social media under Brian_O'Neill_investor on Facebook and Instagram. And also remember to follow this podcast if you're listening to an audio. And if you're on YouTube watching the video, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Okay, back to the interview. You're my brother, you're stuck with me. So,
Yeah.
and I'm never going to just, bounce them out of here. I'm not going to talk to you again. Like this is over. So that does change the dynamic. You always have some level of, it's a different dynamic when it's someone that you didn't know, partner with. You couldn't end up not knowing them again. That's not the case for your brothers. That's interesting. Do you guys have all the same like risk profile? Is there one brother that's more like yes on risk? The other one's like, ooh, hold on.
Yeah, I would say so. There's three of us, right? Me, my twin, my older brother. My older brother is 100% the more visionary risk taker, like all gas, no brakes. My twin brother, I would say, him and me are both more of a brakes. We're more of the brakes, but I think I'm right in the middle, if I had to be honest. But I definitely like to put the brakes on it too, think about it, and then I'm willing to take the action. My twin brother, I'd say, is a little bit more risk averse in a way, just how he is. I don't know why, but I think it's a really good balance because my older brother, if it was just him, obviously we would, he would just drive himself into a wall. But without him, we wouldn't move, right? It was his idea to jump into real estate at first. I know we were talking. I think one of the questions was how we were able to afford to get into real estate. At first, we had no money, being broke college kids. So my older brother was the only one that could qualify for a credit card, and that's how we were able to afford to pull lists of data, to afford a Mojo dialer, which is an automatic dialer to cold call. All of these different subscriptions that we used at first to get our first wholesale deals, and that ended up being about $7,000 in credit card debt. It's not a smart thing. I don't recommend it, but you can see my brother, it was his idea, and he was willing to put that on his credit. So it was a risk that none of us took but him, but we kind of all went in hand, taking action. He literally said, worst case, you guys you keep your credit good and mine will go bad. Yeah, that was the mindset he had, and so it definitely helps to have someone like that.
That's awesome. So you guys have your own little incubator almost, all three the same age, you're living together, and you're just cranking out content and capital raising. That's super cool. It's like I wish I had three of myself back in my 20s to be able to do something like that. So like
I call it like a constant mastermind.
Yeah, exactly. So total side question, like just social life question. Like most people in their 20s are not focusing on assets and passive income and stuff. They're trying to find a 9-to-5 job and things like that. Is that weird with friends? Like I imagine you guys work a lot, but also have this flexibility, and you're flying to different states, looking at properties and doing things. Like, is that just a total disconnect with other friends your age, or do you find that your friends group have changed? I know this has nothing to do with real estate. I'm just curious.
No, I think this is a really important question too to anything in business. But so initially, I left school my freshman year, and fortunately, I had one of my best friends that I grew up with he was right next door to me in my dorm. So when I started wholesaling, I was cold calling in my dorm room, and I wouldn't be able to do it in my dorm room because my roommate was not always the best person to be around when I was doing that, because it wasn't as fun. I was getting rejected, and I thought maybe being in my friend's room, it'd be better, and we would take turns cold calling. And then his roommate was sometimes in there, and I was like, man, if you guys get a deal, I'll give you 10%. And I hadn't even done a deal yet, so I was already like working my negotiations. So we all got the bug at that point, and it wasn't real until COVID-19 hit. I hadn't closed my first deal. This was about 3 months after I started cold calling. Once my two brothers and I were back home because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we weren't allowed to be in our dorm rooms anymore. We were all back at home, and then instead of calling for 2 hours a day each, we eventually started taking a little bit more risk, going from 9 to 8 p.m. cold calling. And this was every day of the week. So as you can see, more calls, it's a numbers game. Eventually, we did get our first deal, and it was the biggest deal that I ever did in the whole year in regards to the assignment fee we made. And I sent the picture to my friends, not to brag, but to show them I'm dropping out. I said I'm dropping out. That's what I told them. And they were all already interested in real estate and becoming an entrepreneur and trying to build some type of financial stability because we all were broke. So that really inspired them, and they all slowly started dropping out after we did. And now I'm fortunate because I have this entrepreneur group that consists of maybe eight young entrepreneurs within the ages of 21 and 25. So it's eight of us. I'm really blessed to have it, and that it doesn't include my brothers. So it's a pretty big group. But outside of that, you mentioned traveling. I try to go to at least 4 to 5 conferences a year. I'm in 2 mastermind groups currently. We're actually a part of the same one, Raise Masters, and most people in those or that are in those groups are a lot older than I am, and I think that's awesome because I have so much to learn in so many aspects of life. I also go to church, and I have this small community church that's local to where I am, and all the people in the church are typically, like, the adults are a lot older than I am too. So I'm just surrounded by people that I have so much to learn from, and I think by doing that, that is my social life. Now, obviously, I'm not going to act like I'm a robot, and I don't do anything else for fun. Like, I do have fun things that I like to do, like play soccer, but I think I just recently got into my faith more seriously, and as I've done that, it's pulled me away from doing the things that, regardless of your age, I don't think we should be doing. So I've been able to surround myself with people that I think are better in the long run in all aspects, and that kind of pulls me away from, I guess, a lot of the younger people that maybe like have those bad habits that take some time to grow out of. Fortunately, the people that I'm hanging out with aren't doing those things, so it's easier to stay away from them.
Got it. That's super. That's super cool, knowledgeable, and I can't believe I should have done something different in my 20s. I think I started my own company, but yeah, that's a lot of time that you can really utilize. What was your degree you're going for before you stopped school?
Yeah, so I was there for like a year, right? So I was going to. You don't typically choose
You,
your
yeah.
degree in, right, gen eds, but I was going to be a sales or marketing major. I really didn't know the difference at the time. I had no idea what sales was or marketing, to be honest, no idea. But then obviously you learn that as an entrepreneur. You have to.
Awesome. So yeah, so you basically did your own sales gig. You just skipped the 4 years. That's what you would have been doing 4 years later. You've been cold calling, trying to get sales like that. What's your sort of thought on? It seems to be more and more a topic that comes up on college versus going and getting mentoring as far as going into different
Yeah,
careers. And obviously, you can't become a doctor and operate on people. You can't become an engineer and things like that unless you go to actual school for
right.
college. But for everything else, do you see that being more of a trend around people you hang out with? I have young kids, they're only 2 and 4, and we're already thinking like, man, I don't know if college is really worth it depending on what career they want. I would much
Yeah.
rather send them through a mentoring type system where they can learn those skills. Because honestly, a lot of the stuff you learn in college is kind of useless unless you have
Mm.
a tangible skill you're trying to obtain there that requires, a degree in
Yeah,
engineering or medical. Do you have any
that's
comments on
for
that?
true.
Just like people that are
Yeah, I
contemplating
do.
college still?
I have a few points. So the first one, I think it depends on the person, right? Obviously, there's no like cookie cutter solution for any type of situation. In this case, a lot of the people I was spending time with in high school, I wouldn't say everyone, but I'd say a large portion of them, or just people that I knew, weren't going to school because they liked school or that they wanted to learn more. It was just because that was what they thought they had to do. And a lot of people go for the social aspect of it as well, which I think, in my opinion, just being there a few years ago, there's not a lot of benefits to it. I think it's probably like detrimental to your long term future for various reasons, but it's not for everyone. So if you are serious about going to college and having your kid go to college because they know what they want to do, they want to be a doctor, lawyer, an attorney, um, dentist, whatever. That we need those types of people, and they need to get educated. So I think that's the right path for them to go on. But if your child doesn't really know what they want to do, or they already have some interest in something else, I mean, I was just hanging out with my mentor this weekend, and he knows obviously I dropped out of school. His kids are coming up on going to college, and my mentor is very successful, probably like the most successful person that I've ever met. And he's not sending his kids to college. In fact, he was telling me one of them is working with him now, and the other one is not in college yet. I think she's halfway through high school, but he was offering to pay her not to go because she wants to go for the social reasons. And it's just so funny that like I felt like when I was taking that leap of faith and I was burning the bridges, if you will, it seemed like no one was dropping out. Like I thought I was the black sheep of the society and all of this. But now it seems like it's more and more common that people aren't going to school. Maybe it's because I'm seeing it now because I did it, right? But I think it really just depends on the person. I truly think for me, mentorship was the main thing. Like the people that I've been able to meet, the conversations I've been able to have, the skills that I'm still working on, but I've done things that I look back and say, if I a lot of my friends are graduating now, this summer, and I would have been graduating this summer hopefully. But since I left school, I look back and say, if I were to have gotten that degree and maybe gotten like a six-figure salary going out of college, luckily most people don't even do that.
Yeah.
Uh, would I have preferred to be there? And I look at the risks that I've taken, the things that I've failed at, learned, and things that I've achieved, fortunately, and how I've changed as a person and grown. All of that has come from just not being in school, pulling me away from that, and putting myself in different uncomfortable situations that school wouldn't have offered. So I think, like, I personally think that is the right path for me, and I think there's a lot of people that it is the right path for, going a non-traditional route and just finding a different way to educate yourself. Last point I'll touch on is, I think like maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, getting a degree was a lot more uncommon and a lot more valuable. Now everyone's getting a degree, and it's just like, supply and demand. If there's more of something, then it's less and less desirable by companies. So now what they're looking at are different skill sets, experience, and all that you won't really get in a classroom. You have to go do it. So I think everyone has the same amount of time on the planet. It just depends on how you spend it. Some people will spend it in a classroom, while the other person's getting more experience in education and building their skill sets.
Yeah, I think some people go to college just because they're scared of not having credibility, maybe. So I go get a degree, I have some level of credibility, and then I can go, get a job. And then I think they realize somewhere in college, like, oh, I'm not actually learning the true skills I need for this job. I'm just sort of getting credibility to get that job, which you've
Yeah,
showed, and many people show that you can do that in many careers without spending the money in the 4 years to buy the credibility. You can go and earn it much quicker and easier. At the same time, you're learning the skills and the knowledge you actually need to succeed
right.
in that particular career. So I guess let's just wrap it up, because we've been talking about a lot of
Yeah,
lifestyle and your guys' relationship with your brothers and how you kind of took a different route. So you got 1,000 units. You've built the syndication company. Like, where do you want to go in 5 years, 20 years? Are you shooting for the moon, or is this going to be like, hey, let's hit 30 years old and be able to just cruise and go have an amazing life?
yeah. Shooting for the moon for sure. I don't think I want to stop anytime soon. I mean, I enjoy what I do. I love it, and I think that's where God wants me right now. But I can't say that won't change. In regards to the life by design, though, I am very young and I haven't traveled as much as I'd like to. I think that's the benefit of being in real estate at a young age is if you just take a few years, keep your head down, work hard, make the right moves, and slowly you'll build more financial independence. There'll be plenty of time to go travel, and not to say you can't travel while you're building either. Fortunately, I could. My brother maybe not because he's acquisitions, so he kind of has to be here locally. But I can go on a plane and make calls from wherever I am as long as I have signal. So definitely shooting for the moon. That's the goal. In 5 years, we're looking to do anywhere from 4 to 5 deals a year. This year has been slower due to what's going on in the economy and in the market, but I think over the next few years there's going to be a lot of opportunity. So over the next 4 to 5 years, we're hoping to do at least 4 to 5 deals every single year, and then after that, hopefully increase that in 20 years. Would love to be, at over a billion assets under management, and just continuing to grow and help others as well.
For the business side of things, what markets are you guys looking at? Are you down in the Florida area or on the southeast side? And are you on pause right now, or are you still? What size deals are you looking at? Like, sort of, what's your trajectory for this year? I know everyone's changing every few months, but
Yeah,
if things didn't change, what's your current game plan?
for sure. So I live in Durham, North Carolina. We look here in North Carolina, South Carolina, and then Georgia. Obviously, those are 3 states. I like to be in primary markets, or as close to a primary market or a secondary market, worst case. So that includes Atlanta, Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, those kinds of areas. And then for the criteria that we're looking for, it's 100 to 200 units, B class, 1980s vintage or newer in those areas. And right now, we are always looking. We submitted an LOI yesterday. We submitted one I think it was 4 weeks ago. We lost that one. And this one, I don't think we'll win. We're pretty off on the price, but I think is the main thing we're doing, and we've always been doing it, is taking action. And it's interesting, and I'd like to get your thoughts as well. It seems like I grew up like over the last 3 years, not growing up, but I kept hearing from Warren Buffett, and everyone loves to regurgitate this quote: when others are greedy, be fearful, and when others are fearful, be greedy. And everyone likes saying that when things are good and things are nice. But now when people are like everyone's scared, no one's greedy, and it seems like I'm like as a young person, maybe I'm naive, but I'm like this is the time we should be looking. Like that's if anything, just always be taking action and submitting offers at the right price. If it cash flows, right? Um, Obviously, be conservative and make the right choices. Like perhaps it'd be a good idea to fix your interest rate, things like that. But outside of that, if it cash flows and it meets your criteria, I don't see why you wouldn't be looking for deals.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm in that boat as well. We just look at a property and we decide not to put an LOI on it, which we could have done one at the number we were thinking, but we're sort of like, it just doesn't feel, this particular property, the location is what
Yeah,
we didn't like about it. I think there's still a mixed news cycle, which is sort of like, is it positive? It's like a mixture of positive and negative. It
yeah,
almost seems like it
yeah,
needs to go more negative for people to really know where, because some people are still planning on, oh, this is going to go up. Other people are planning like, oh, this could be the first tick of a second downturn. And I think
yeah.
that might be throwing people from taking action as well. I know people are having capital raising concerns because it's hard to raise money.
It
But
is
I mean, you should be able to raise capital. You might need more partners to do it. But if the
right.
properties are out there. I know when we've been, I mean, I'm newer to the game, but people I follow and underwriting we do, it's sort of like, okay, this is where we're currently at. These are the price reductions right now. How much do we need to stress test into it to make sure if it does get worse that we didn't buy in the middle of not be able
Yeah,
to write it down, I guess. Not looking for the best deal. And I don't know, I was listening to someone today that's pretty experienced. It's sort of like they'd rather buy a little late than a little early. So there might be
that's a
that
good point. Yeah,
mentality as well. But this next the rest of this year is going to be interesting for sure.
yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot more activity here pretty soon.
I don't know. Are you familiar with Ken McElroy?
Yeah.
Cool. I've like listened to a lot of his podcasts, and regardless of where I've heard him say, as long as it cash flows, and if it's cash flowing now with this interest rate environment that we're in, I mean, other than your ingoing cap and exit caps, obviously that's where you're going to try to be as conservative as you can. But as long as it cash flows right now at the interest rate that you're going in at, my question is always like, why wouldn't you buy it if it makes sense today? In
I
five to
think they're
six years, who
concerned
knows
about
where we'll be?
stagflation possibly, which is where your
Yeah,
expenses start going up, but rents may move down a little bit because people are getting
yeah,
squeezed. And then that's where your DSCR and other things come into play.
right.
So I think, a buffer. So I've been underwriting, assuming there could be a slight rent reduction in year 1 or 2 and make sure that it could weather that. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
that's true for sure. I guess you just have to have a deal that cash flows better than what you'd want it to, or maybe last year that you were looking for. But
Or something
yeah, I
that,
think yeah,
yeah, I was looking at one yesterday. The guy's owned it for 15 something years. I think 15 or 20 years. He built it originally. He's
yeah,
way under on rents, which is pretty common for someone that just owns it forever and doesn't really keep I think there's like
right. Mom and
four or
pop.
$500 a unit under. So it's sort of like, okay, you could buy that. You could fix your, you could get a lot of cash flow of that pretty easy without almost any
Hmm.
improvements. So something like that, I think we would look at more seriously. That seems
Yeah,
super safe right now, as far as
yeah,
it has downside protection. So
for sure.
cool, man. Well, it was super cool meeting you and be able to talk to you. Your story is super incredible. I a lot of times don't go into the backstories of people because they're all kind of the same, and yours definitely isn't. And I wish I had the forethought and the drive. When I was in my 20s, I started my own company, and I thought I was on the leading edge, and then meet someone like you guys that are doing what I'm doing in my 40s. You guys are starting it when you're 20s, so that's going to be incredible to see where you go. If people want to find out more about your guys' company, Donis Investment Group, I know you have a ton of social media stuff. It's making me look bad, so I got to give out my social media to what you guys are able to accomplish. Where can they find you guys?
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. My brother created it's like a passive investor checklist. So if you're looking to vet a passive investment opportunity, feel free to use it. It's located at www.donisinvestmentgroup.com/checklist. And then we're on social media everywhere at Donis Brothers. You can visit our YouTube channel at Donis Brothers as well. And our podcast is The Real Estate Monopoly.
Cool. Awesome. I appreciate having you on, and I'm sure we'll see each other soon.